I'm Russ Milheim from the Direct. Uh,
Hmm.
here to talk about Avatar. Thank you for taking the time. And congratulations on season one.
Thank you very much. I was very excited and impatient for it to come on air.
Yeah,
I'd seen it previously, but I wanted everybody else to see it.
it's been a while, right? You finished filming like 2 years ago.
But a year last fall, not this a year, well, a year and a bit,
Year and
because we had additional photography
yeah.
as well. So,
Did
but
the,
yeah, it's been a while.
did the strikes push it as well?
No,
Didn't affect it? Well, that's good at least.
no, yes, that is good.
One of the first questions I wanted to ask you is, a simple and expected one, but how
Mhm.
familiar with the original animated series were you, going into the show or like to this production? And did you get more familiar with it?
I had seen about three, maybe four seasons of the animation prior to even knowing that this was going to happen. Um, so I was somewhat familiar. I did not like some fans who watched it over and over. I have chatted with some friends, and they said, "Oh yeah, when I grew up, I'd watched it five, six, seven times the series." And I go, that's a lot of time spent watching a show, but they loved it. So I was somewhat familiar. And when the offer came in to to join the team, I delved right back into it and and got familiar again because I'd not forgotten, but time passes and
I only just recently, I only just finished the series like a week ago, like the original animated show. Like I'd
yeah.
heard about it so much and I just never got around to watching it. But then I was like, well, I have to do it now.
Oh, it's fantastic. When I saw it, I was just like, wow, it's so much about story.
Yeah. And next up is Korra. That's next. I'm gonna get to it.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
We'll get there. I
there's
hope.
the much criticized 2010 live action movie, right, that you guys are following. I mean, there's quite a good amount of distance. But when
Mhm.
working on this new series, were there any specific steps that you or just the team in general took to kind of make sure that you distanced this adaptation from what was attempted before?
I don't think we spoke about the feature at all. We
I think a lot of
just
people prefer that.
so I've read.
Yeah.
I honestly I did not see it.
I
So,
haven't seen it either. I just hear people complain about it all the time.
oh my goodness, yes. We focused on the original, trying to stay true to the characters, at least cinematically from my end. I'm not a writer, but I try to, transcribe that to the big screen. And spoke about keeping Katara and Sokka together, or when Aang joins the team, the three characters in frames, and then isolating them and keeping, the bad guys, the classic filmmaking, a little lower, the push-ins, fun stuff like that.
How often did you try to kind of emulate the original animated series, like shot by shot? Did you try to avoid that, or did you at times where you're like, oh, let's try to do this just like the show did it?
No, I think it was more inspiration and bringing what we could to the project, to the the live action. Um, but when we, at some points in time, Albert Kim, the showrunner, would say, "Hey, I have this scene, and you should have a look at it just to get your mind wrapped around where I'm going and what I'm thinking." Something that we would definitely look at scenes, but not shot for shot.
There's a lot that this show does accurately, but sometimes it does take some liberties, and one of those was surprising. In the very first episode, we get to actually see, this genocide of the air nomads. What was it like, kind of bringing that scene to life?
A lot of work. Um,
I can
it
imagine.
was it was it was very exciting. That was a lot, and when I say it was a lot of work, the stunt team. I mean, if when you watch what it is, I mean, when I saw it put together and the visuals are put in, because it was shot on green screen. Obviously, we had some set pieces, the stairs and stuff on rocks and whatnot on set. But it was the stunt team that really made this happen. Uh, they worked tirelessly for days, probably weeks ahead of time, just behind the scenes, just rehearsing. And we'd go in through their rehearsals and watch what they were doing, the director, myself, or we would see what they'd film it and say, this is what, and then they'd put a bit of a montage of what they were envisioning, and things would get tweaked from there.
And that scene, kind of showcases with this new series is much darker. It can be more violent than the show. Did you guys ever
Mhm.
have to rein it in when you guys were filming? Kind of adapt how you were doing a scene because maybe it got a little too brutal, or you were showing a little
Uh,
too much?
Not consciously, no. Not that nothing that was brought up to my attention. I mean, we did realize that our audience would be a younger audience, as well as people in their 30s and 40s who'd watched it. You keep that in mind, but I mean, we were not into the big blood and gore.
Yeah, there's no
There
blood
are,
and gore. Yeah.
but there are the big fire explosions and the implications of, someone
People,
burning.
yeah, burned alive.
Yeah, exactly. And no, we want. I think the idea was to keep their ferociousness, their inhumane approach to just kill, kill, kill.
Now you guys used you talked about the green screens. You guys used the volume as well, right?
We did a lot
And that's yeah,
throughout
I
the
wanted
whole.
to ask, like, what is it? Working that with that technology is obviously a unique experience. How did you do that with Avatar?
It was the first time I'd worked on something that to that scale, that large. I've worked on smaller rear projection or volume screens, LED screens for other shows. This one was much larger. It was about 90 feet wide and about, I can't remember, 25 feet high. And we had the ceiling as well that projected an image. How did we approach it? Like almost regular filmmaking, yet we were learning as every day would be something. Oh yeah, okay, we can do this. Oh no, we can't do that. Uh, Back then in the technology, and we're talking a couple of years ago, and technology, as we all know, advances at a ferocious rate. Um, we couldn't do off speed, meaning slow mo. We were limited to how much slow mo we could do, which in an action sequence that can be very helpful if you want to just accentuate a moment uh, of someone flying through the air or any kind of action. So that was, we're kind of going, oh, okay, so let's figure how we can do this and what are our limits. And we ended up pushing technology as much as we could. Um, Filming two cameras side by side with the same background, we couldn't do it at the same time because the frustrum, it would be the A camera, let's say, would have a priority. So if the A camera moved, the B camera would be static. It would see the background moving, and that would be a complete, unusable. So we ended up shooting straight on and then profiling a bit more, just to get a different background. So that was something we had to adjust. I mean, those are small tweaks, but the, we figured, the directors and myself, we kind of went, okay, this works, this doesn't work, let's make this happen.
What do you think the volume helped the show achieve that traditional methods might not have been able to do as well or as feasibly?
Creating new environments that would cost a fortune to build on a stage. I think that when we're creating four different worlds that the airbender goes through, that was, I think that's where you can just let your mind or your imagination just run free.
Now, this kind of it leads into one of my questions, a harder question here for you. Is
Hmm.
some fans have been talking about how they feel like sometimes maybe the show's a little too reliant on VFX. So for you, when you guys are figuring all this out, how do you figure out, that balance? Like what is going to be a VFX? What are we going to work practically? What are we going to build? How are we going to shoot it? How do you balance that, like real life and VFX?
I guess it all starts in prep. You know, that's where we talk about what can we achieve that is practical and what is not practical. Obviously, the flames are not practical. Water bending is practical only up to a point. If someone is bending, I think it's in episode 4 maybe, where Katara, I think it's 4, where she's by the campfire and she knocks over a container. I mean, that's the water that comes in the frame is VFX, but the object that's knocked over is practical through the effects team. So there's a mix and match. But again, it is a VFX heavy show. We're in 4 different environments that don't really exist in our world today. I mean, I was on a road show for a year, but a lot of it was on stage.
Despite what some of those people, say, there's definitely great VFX in the show, right? One of the things I wanted to point out was the end. So in episode 8, the ocean spirit is, incredible, and that sequence is great. And I know a lot of that is VFX work, so not quite on you. But when it came to your part in that sequence, what did you have to do practically to kind of help make that VFX sequence possible? Did you do anything on
When Aang
stages?
when Aang is floating up in the air
Yeah, when he's
inside
when
the,
he's that monster and basically destroying the town.
my end was pretty darn simple. We had Aang on wires floating, so he could just rotate slowly and feel as if he was suspended in air. And I just added a little bit of flicker just to motivate it so VisFX could accentuate it up to the point that where they felt was realistic. So from my end, it was very simple.
As we've discussed, there's all these different bending abilities, earth, fire, water, air. For
Mm,
you, did you
mm.
approach each differently visually? Did you like try to do certain camera techniques or shots or lenses when certain people were using certain abilities?
With the fire bending would be mostly lighting, where when let's say their hands are glowing, we would add just a little practical light just to glow up their face. Again, to sell that credibility, to give effects something to work with. We had lights in their hands that would just glow, and then they would just build the flames out of that. I'm giving trade secrets here. So no, that's and again, the best way to approach a VisFX is always trying to keep it simple. And that's always the hardest thing sometimes, to keep things. With the water, that was straightforward filming, although we'd be on a character and they would throw a whip of water, we'd whip off the character, and then another shot would take it whipping into wherever it was landing. The simple little tricks in film.
Which would you say was the hardest to film uh in a way that was believable? Which did you have the most trouble with?
I would say fire bending, trying to make it natural. Because fire is when we're filming a fireplace or a campfire, let's say, we always have we don't always use real fire. For practicality, if you're inside, you can't have a flame bar, so you use lighting and trying to make sure, and people will see where it's fake and not fake. So trying to keep it subtle is always the challenge. Another one that was really fun was the boomy fight, where a lot of stuff happens there, with the rocks and dust and the flips and everything. That was a lot of fun to film. No, and also the boomy character,
Mhm.
to me, it was fantastic. I mean, he was a lot of fun to film.
The show is very vibrant, a lot of colors. You just every time these 4 nations, they have their own color palettes. So I wanted to ask you, what was the process like finding the right color, like the color palette for the show, and transitioning between different ones? Because when you're in the Earth Nation, things look different than when you were in the middle of the Fire Nation.
Um, just go with logic, even though we're complete fiction. Um, but if you know what I mean. Let's say we're basically in the Earth Nation, Omashu, warm tones, earth tones, uh, more comfortable kind of world. Whereas when you're in the Fire Nation, dark backgrounds and flames far in the background. Everything that was lit in the Fire Nation was motivated by flames. And when we're out into the southern water tribe or in the northern water tribe, it's colder. So you bring in that cooler feel to it. And when we're outside, you have the coolness and you have the wind just blowing a bit, just to create that illusion that we are actually up north.
Hey, well, I mean, it worked.
For the most part, it works. I see all the problems,
Oh
and I
yeah,
won't point.
but yeah, I
I'll
would say
leave
for the
that.
most part, it definitely worked. And,
Yeah.
another thing that I really enjoyed was the inclusion of Appa and Momo. And so I want to obviously their works of VFX, but on your end, there is a practicality that you have to work with. So how did you guys pull those companions off, practically without VFX when you were filming it?
So Momo is complete VFX. Uh, I have to hand it to them. They did a brilliant job throughout the whole series. Whereas Appa, um, special effects built a half Appa, upper half. So that would our actors would be sitting on a saddle, and we could be off, the front of the head and just come off from the head and into close-ups of our actors. And then visual effects basically created the bottom half. And this whole Appa apparatus that was created, which was rather large, was on a gimbal, so it could tilt and rock and spin. So it gave it that illusion of movement. So when they were going somewhere, they'd end up going like that. And you add a bit of wind, and in your lights, you add a little bit of light movement, and here you are, clouds are going by, and you're way up in the air.
Yeah, I mean, but all the Appa scenes were believable. I'm sorry, was there no like Momo doll or anything for them to interact with when you guys were doing some of
Yes,
those?
there was. Yeah, for the
Okay,
actors, there was a Momo doll. Yeah, there was.
okay,
And
as long as there was a doll on set.
oh yeah, and Momo was a huge hit.
Yeah.
The doll. Everybody said, "I want one. I want one." It was very sweet.
We've talked obviously a lot about a lot of the challenges this show presented, but if you could pick what was the most unique challenge that the production presented to you, so not necessarily the most challenging one, but like the strangest or most unique one that you hadn't really come across before, and you're like,
Well,
oh, I guess that is a hard
I
thing to
love
test.
that. I like that. Trying to think. Oh, I would say the climax at the end when we're in the Northern Water Tribe, the fight scene on the bridge. That was unique because I mean it was a beautifully huge set with a practical bridge, and getting in there and creating fight scenes, and then also being underneath the bridge and creating a whole water world. That was pretty unique. The opening and then at the other end, the opening of the sequence, the chase, to me that was it was a great challenge. We had a lot of fun doing that. And when I saw that put together, I just went, yep, I think we nailed it.
We briefly mentioned the slow mo. You were talking about it earlier. I wanted to ask you, the series utilizes it quite often in some of its action scenes. So how do you guys choose when, like, which parts of these scenes are going to get that emphasis? And do you prepare, ahead of time, and like, do you know what moments of a fight scene you're going to be doing that, or do you basically film it all how you need to film it in case you need to go and use it wherever?
No, there's a discussion, usually myself, the director, the stunt coordinator, and in episodic, the showrunner. We go, okay, these sections, and often it's boarded out. Um, and we say, okay, this is all regular. Okay, let's have a slow mo here. I think this is, a point where we want it. So we talk about the certain areas where we'd like to have slow mo. Um, and sometimes we might film it just regular speed, just in case. Uh, Special considerations, just, sometimes you need just a little bit more light or higher ISO just to make sure you can go up to 96 or 120, not to get caught off guard.
When making a series or just anything production wise, a lot of things get cut. Can you recall any fun scenes that you kind of that didn't make the final cut that you were like, oh,
Offhand, no. I know that in the back of my mind when I was watching the series in color grading, but also I watched it when it came out because I wanted to see what it looked like on TV. I went, oh wow, they didn't do that. Oh, they didn't do that. Offhand, no, but there are a couple of them that exist, but I cannot tell you exactly what. And you kind of go, well, if it serves the story, what can you do? And sometimes, I mean, even an episodic, if you're doing a 1 hour show, they'll shoot extra just to be able to A, tighten it, and B, just sometimes people are not 100% sure where they want things to go.
You mentioned color grading, and I wanted to bring up the when the moon dies in the finale.
Hmm.
Things go black and white except, or basically black and white except for the fire illuminating things.
Yep.
Um, how did you guys how did you guys pull that off? What was the process in making that look how it did?
Combination of practical lighting on set. We're shooting all LED, and that was on the volume. So that was, and also on the bridge at the end. So with LED, that's much easier to do, changing colors. And so I did I started the process on set. Basically, when the moon goes red, then that all the LEDs went red. And when the moon's gone, that was post. I did a lot of work in that. Um, but by stripping the color. I mean, my motivation is always keeping the practicals, the flames and whatnot true, and then letting everything else go to where it's supposed to go. So we have something to, psychologically, you're thinking of, okay, that flame looks normal, so the rest of the world is not. And then it helps sell that concept.
We mentioned I mentioned Korra earlier. We mentioned just how broad and expansive this franchise is. Can you recall any fun Easter eggs that you guys tried to put in there, or at least capture that maybe you think fans haven't seen, or that even if they've seen it, you're like, oh, I really liked noting that small thing in the background.
No, I can't. I want to let the audience figure that one out.
I'm sure they will, and I think they've already done so.
I,
Um,
I'm not sure.
with the first season now complete,
Mhm.
it is out. What is the most important piece of knowledge or experience you feel you have gained as a filmmaker that you'll use going forward?
Be patient. And as one post-production supervisor once told me, fix it in prep.
You'll
And I,
reverse.
yeah, and I told her I'm stealing that. And I've been using it forever. And that's what we try to do is, try to always figure stuff out early so you're not fixing it down the road where it might not be fixable or it becomes on certain shows unattainable financially. And those are realities that I know myself I have to deal with all the time. Feasibility of doing a shot. And the production this size, and it was massive. A lot of discussions with the directors, with Jabbar and Jet. Those are the two directors I worked with when I did the 4 episodes. Um, that was really important.
I have to ask, have you heard
Mm,
anything about a season two yet?
nothing yet. I'm hoping it happens because it was a seriously a fun show to work on. Like I said earlier, I'm on a stage and I've traveled around the world. And to me, that is the coolest thing any filmmaker can do is recreate different, in the snow, on the ocean, in not the desert, but in an arid mountain area.
Well, I was gonna, you're familiar with the show. So if you are part of season two and it's going forward and it's renewed, what would you be most excited to tackle, in this next season, assuming it's probably what, book two, so the
Mhm.
Earth stuff.
I think it's just character development. Just delve into what our characters can bring. I mean, that was I think a lot of magic and of the animation because animation they were able to go. It's very different beast than live action. So in the animation, you were able to get into the characters because it went on for numerous seasons, and that part I think is a lot of fun.
Mhm. Well, thank you again for talking with me about Avatar. I enjoyed it. I can only assume that it's going to get a season two. It's one of those.
Fingers
It's
crossed.
like I can't imagine they would do all of this, spend all this money on like just the first sliver of the story. You know?
I have a well having seen it on TV which is a different reality than when you're color grading. I'm going, man, this totally works, and that's important. And I've been, like many of us, I read, reviews and just see what the fans think, and a vast majority of the fans have enjoyed the show. And many understand that it's not the animation series; it's something, it's its own entity.